Fighting games are no stranger to DLC. Back during Street Fighter 2's prime, the DLC of the time was releasing a new revision every year, and that was the basic monetization model for fighting games. Release a revision with tweaked gameplay, some new characters, and arcade mode endings, and call it a day. As the video game industry evolved, so did its methods of monetization, which led to the rise of DLC and microtransactions. In the last decade, the fighting game genre has taken advantage of DLC, and no longer do you need to buy a game you already paid for again. Now, you can choose what to buy. Maybe you want one new character, or all of them, or none of them. It's never been a better time to be a fighting game fan. I don't think DLC is necessarily greedy. Developers need money to continue supporting these games. They can't do it for free, and DLC helps fund further development, but sometimes things get pushed a little too far, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Today, I'm going to show you what I think is some of the greediest DLC we've ever seen in fighting games. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is one of the most beloved fighting games ever made, but that doesn't mean it's perfect, especially when it comes to DLC. The base game had two DLC characters, Jill Valentine and Shuma Gorath. Pretty standard stuff, nothing wrong with that. The problem is, 6 months after its initial release, it would be re-released again as Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. While I do think that was a bad move on Capcom's part, that's not even the reason why I'm talking about Marvel 3. Because if you bought UMVC 3, you still had to pay for Jill and Shuma. They were not included. There is absolutely no reason as to why they weren't included in Ultimate, other than squeezing out a few extra bucks. I dealt with this firsthand when I picked up a copy in 2012 and realized, hey, I'm missing two characters. The worst part about it is the DLC for UMVC 3 was eventually pulled from digital stores due to licensing issues, meaning that if you didn't buy them when you had the chance, tough luck. Thankfully, UMVC 3 would go on to get a re-release with all of its DLC included, so this example has a happy ending, although the whole situation could have been avoided if they just included them in Ultimate in the first place. For a more modern example, let's take a look at Tekken 7. Tekken 7 has had fairly standard DLC as far as fighting games are concerned, but one piece of DLC stands out to me as an egregious example of greedy DLC. I'm of course talking about the frame data DLC. Those unaware, frame data is a part of every fighting game. When you hear a move is safe, unsafe, or plus, that's frame data. Why is this greedy, you may ask? When it comes down to it, frame data is something that, as of late, was being included in games as a base feature or as part of a free update. At the time, to see a big company like Bandai Namco charging for what should have been a standard feature was worrying because, well hey, if they make money selling frame data, it's very likely that other developers would charge for it as well. The only real upside to this is that it only cost $4, a drop in the bucket, but it could be $1, it could be $1,000. It's the principle that counts, and thankfully, this charging for frame data thing didn't seem to catch on. Frame data is an important part of learning fighting games, and I can understand if a developer doesn't want to include it because they feel like it would affect how fast the game develops. Not including it is one thing, I get that, but to charge for it in a game that already doesn't have a good tutorial, or any real tutorial at all, a game with so many layers upon layers of knowledge that you need to be proficient, it just doesn't make any sense, and it still boggles my mind to this day why they thought charging for frame data was ever a good idea. Crossovers are some of the most exciting things in fighting games, whether it be a character crossing over into another franchise or a full-on crossover game. A crossover is bound to bring something interesting to the table. Street Fighter Cross Tekken was no exception. It combines Tekken Tag with Street Fighter 4, which on paper sounds like a great idea, but In execution, it left a lot to be desired. Although, one thing I think they did objectively right was the marketing. Street Fighter Cross Tekken has the best trailers I've ever seen for a fighting game, period. My favorite trailer being the King and Marduk versus Hugo and Poison trailer. Right at the end of the trailer, it has a great sting where Guy and Cody come smashing through the aftermath of the brawl. It is just so hype. I hope you didn't want to play as Guy and Cody though, because that's gonna cost you extra. They are 2 of the 12 characters that are DLC. But that sounds pretty standard, right? Well, only problem is that you see that disc you have there with Street Fighter Cross Tekken on it? Yeah, those characters already on the disc. That's right. You are paying for characters already on a disc you own. You are literally paying for kilobytes of data to tell the game, hey, let him pick those characters. This caught heavy backlash, and while Capcom gave some half-hearted excuse as to why they had to do it and how it was saving space or something, interestingly enough, they never did it again. Huh. I wonder why. It's almost like someone cut a deal to make those characters exclusive to a handheld. Guess we'll never know. This is my personal pick for the greediest fighting game DLC I've ever seen. It's one thing to have a day one pre-order character, but it's another thing to have 12 entire characters locked on a disc you already paid for, and just hoping people never noticed. But no, yeah, this one definitely takes the cake. And those were my picks for the greediest DLC in fighting games. What do you think? Is there something worse I didn't list? I'd honestly love to hear about it. These examples came from my own personal experiences, so there's definitely gotta be some stuff that I missed. Thankfully, everything we talked about in the video today is like a ghost of the past. We live in a much better era of fighting games, although I want to give an honorable mention to BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. They made a big deal because they had Ruby characters in it, launched with 2 Ruby characters, and then were going to charge for the other 2 Ruby characters. Well, that got backlash and was backtracked extremely fast, and those characters were given out for free. Ultimately, a great decision. And you know what? I hope nothing in the future will ever top anything on this list, because if it does, that would just suck. Like always, have a great day, and goodbye.